So
Yeah, and I had another question about it because I'm kind of I'm struggling to understand it. So I was hoping you could help. Zelensky announced that he was putting forth, this is in motion, to ban the Orthodox Church in Ukraine. And the reason I'm confused about this is I thought that that was very much the heart of some Ukrainian culture as well. And that doesn't sound very diplomatic, by the way, because you know how America says we're spreading democracy or whatever, but that banning an entire church and then going after the priests. What is your thought on that? It's in motion. So the ban I think started yesterday or whatever. That's
well, what I'm reading here is that it's he's considering burning churches affiliated with Russia. It's not just all of Orthodoxy.
no,
Uh,
that's what the Western media says. But if you look at international, like Al Jazeera or some other
as well.
outlets, they say it's the Orthodox Church specifically to
Yeah,
ban the religion, to ban the actual religion of practice.
yeah.
So,
So I read Al Jazeera on a daily basis.
so
Ukraine
what
can curb activities on Russian affiliated groups. So
so
it's
what
not.
is your thought? What is your thought on that?
Well, one, it's not just Western media. I think we should keep that in mind. I also read South Chinese Morning Post, so I read Asian-oriented media as well. I also
What's your
read.
thought on the Orthodox Church about banning? Well, I mean, affiliations to Russian. I mean, whenever I talk to, like, for instance, I brought up Igor earlier in the interview. He's Ukrainian and Russian. And he grew, he did college or university in Russia in Moscow, but grew up in Ukraine. But he said that almost everyone has ties to both countries, emotional, business, educational, and religious. So I'm just curious what your thoughts are about banning.
Well,
Imagine,
no, I don't think. I mean, banning Russian-affiliated religious entities is not going to change the stage or phase of the war. Um, it's a pretty, it's a pretty undemocratic thing to do, perhaps. But equally, you have to understand that the Ukrainians feel a large proportion of the Ukrainians, choosing my words very carefully there, not the majority, not the minority, a large proportion, are, very, very, absolutely, you know, vehemently against anything and everything to do with Russia. The Orthodox
the Orthodox. Okay,
well, the
gotcha.
Orthodoxy Church came about because when the Byzantine Empire, sorry, when the Constantinople, excuse me, can't think of my words today. When Constantinople was basically taken over by the Ottoman Empire, it was moved and adopted by Muscovy. I can't remember the specific dates, but basically, you can look it up. Moscow became what was known as the Third Rome
Hold on.
because
Go on. Yeah.
sort of 14 1500s around that area. And basically, so Moscow Orthodoxy has a much stronger affiliation with the Grand Duchess of Moscow than it does necessarily with the original Kievan Rus, which is where Kiev was founded in 1862 or 1882 by the Vikings that were traveling down to trade with the Constantinople. So, the Orthodoxy Church was essentially, that's why you've got Russian Orthodoxy versus Greek and stuff, because it was purposely taken by the leader at the time and wanted to be protected because Constantinople and Russia had well, at least the variations of what was Russia, Novgorod, and other entities that shifted around before Russia officially came around, was they were very strong alliance in historically. So he wanted to protect the legacy and what remained of that part of Constantinople. And then you had the skirmishes with the Tartars. You had skirmishes with the Catholic Church over Poland. Sweden was around. And then that's before we get to the time of troubles in the early 1600s, for finally the current sort of, I forget the name of the Mikhail Romanov, who became the leader and led Russia for several, decades, centuries afterwards, that dynasty. So Yeah, it's it's a very complex area, and I don't think that Zelensky's action here is necessarily going to improve the situation. It's certainly not going to improve the anti-Russian narrative that many people across the world feel is happening. But in the West, it's going to be, at least in certain parts of the West, it's going to be seen as an acceptable and proportionate thing to do. So, I think this war has really deepened those divisions between people who are in the West and think that the West is, more on the right side of history versus those who, well, everybody else, large proportions of the globe who think that it's, hypocritical, it's questionable of Zelensky's actions. So it's very difficult. It's a very difficult thing, but I don't have. I'm not here to say whether or not it's the right thing
Yeah,
to do.
that was a really good historical dive. Thank you. And I know the
Yeah,
audience.
sorry, I'm boring. I'm probably half your
No,
audience.
no, no, that's actually really fascinating. And I know some of the history, but I know some of the audience that doesn't. And so, you just sort of see something like that laid flat in a paper. It doesn't make any sense, but there's a long history with that church, with buildings that have been there since for centuries, and families that have worshipped in a certain way. So it's kind of interesting.